What's happening with succulents? Succulents are no more just hen chicks. Hi, I'm Annette Heisdorffer, the Extension Agent for Horticulture Education in Daviess County. So what are succulents? And these succulents are drought-resistant plants that have adapted to their particular environment where it's dry and arid. They store water in their leaves, stems, and roots, causing them to appear fleshy. And they can be grown indoors or outdoors and are suitable for any window that receives at least 6 hours of light. This information came from West Virginia University Extension Service because many times there's different definitions, and this is the one that I chose. We've had succulents all along, but now they've become a whole lot more popular. Even as you see at the bottom, it has surprised me, and I didn't think about it, but that's true. The snake plant, or mother-in-law's tongue at the bottom picture, is actually a succulent. I never thought about that, but there are a whole lot more that are out there too. So we're going to talk about some different types and also about how they're used. What do succulents require? Because we're throwing them all kind of in the same basket. Basically, it's well-drained soil, and there are some potting soils made for succulents. If you can't find that or don't want to use that, you could add 1 part coarse sand to your potting soil, or maybe perlite to that potting soil. Or again, it's a soilless mixture. You don't want to go out into the garden and dig it up for these particular ones at this particular point. We'll talk about some that can stay outside, but in general, especially when we use them in the house. And the reason I put this program together too was to investigate what can stay outside. So we'll find out those particular plants. So most of these are going to be in potting soil. The nice thing about succulents is they require a little water. For me, especially, it seems like in my day, I tend to not think about watering. The amount of water, though, depends on the type of plant, the size of the plant, the time of the year, and the potting soil used. Touch the soil to determine when water is needed. Now, depending on which one you have, again, depends on how much it needs. So it could maybe use water only once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks, possibly. Indoor plants, if you're putting them indoor, they do require bright light, and a few require direct sun. Outdoors, it's basically partial shade to a bright indirect light. Otherwise, we would think, oh, it goes right in bright direct sun, but that's not true. We want to avoid, at least for most of them, we want to avoid hot, middle of the day, intense sun. So when we're changing the light intensity as we move from inside to outside, we just need to do that gradual change. So if it's a brighter area, kind of move it to a little darker and then into the house. They require little fertilizer. And what I also found out is you have to know the growing period, because you don't want to be fertilizing it when it's really not its growing period and it's dormant. We can fertilize maybe once or twice a year to 3 times a year. And we can just use a general houseplant fertilizer at half the rate recommended on the container. So as I describe those needs, again, it comes to, well, how do I know which one needs a little more water, a little less light? I'm going to group these by the genus. There are so many species within each genus, but in looking and doing the research, I found that it was easier to think about the genus in general. So aloe is one of those that is a particular genus. Many different species are found in it. A lot of times these are large plants, so for containers, you're looking for dwarfs. They do not tolerate freezing weather. They might go down to possibly lower temperatures, but definitely not our environment. Leaves are smooth, they can be bumpy, prickly, toothed margins. When you're thinking about the aloe, you think about the aloe plant that we use in as a house plant. And at the bottom are different cultivars that are listed, but as you look at different books and online, there are just so many succulents. And it's different for us in this area because our environment is not suitable for growing them. The Aeonium, that particular one, is partial shade to bright shade. It needs low humidity. This particular one is dormant in the summer and actually grows in early winter. This one doesn't tolerate heat when we think a lot of the succulents might, but this one doesn't. It takes a long time to bloom, but when it does, it dies after blooming. So that's a good thing to know about it. And you can also cut off the rosette as the leaves fall off and start new plants. I love the names like dinner plate, Irish rose, sunburst. I think it's just fun to collect them just for those particular reasons. The Braunsia is one that's considered really a shrublet or creepers. These do tolerate the heat, need bright sun in the summer, bright light, not direct, but bright light. Tolerates about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, but for us in Kentucky, that wouldn't work. Blooms in winter to spring. A common name you might see is ice plant, even though it's a cultivar, that may also be a common name. The Crassula are the jade plants, and they would have stacking leaves. Of course, these leaves are thick, so the jade plant we know is a common house plant. It can be used for bonsai, but there are so many other things that are in this particular genus. The Delosperma is another plant we might hear called ice plant. I have seen it available during spring and many times in mixed containers. Ground cover, 3 to 6 inches tall, tolerates light shade. It's a spreader, a lot of different colors, and its zone is 5 to 10. So it would be one that would possibly overwinter here. The Echeveria is very similar to what I think of as hen and chicks, and they may call it hen and chicks. But the key is it doesn't tolerate temperatures below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas our hen and chicks can be outside and stay through there all winter. These do form a rosette. There are many different edge types on these leaves. They could be wavy or smooth. Partial shade in the summer is important. Again, a lot of different leaf types. It can be a little confusing, but Echeveria, though, will not tolerate our freezing temperatures. The Pachyphytum grows in sunny locations outside and inside. The partial shade is good. These bring in that blue-gray color, maybe a pinkish yellow if it's hot, dry condition. The leaves on this one fall off easily, so if you're working with it and you bump it, those leaves may fall off, so just use those to propagate. They may tolerate freezing conditions, but only for zone 7, and it's pretty iffy. With those that fall off, go ahead and let it set out for a couple of days so it heals over the wound where it was attached, and then you can put it into a well-drained type potting mix to be able to try to propagate it. That's pretty well another presentation in itself. The Haworthia are low light conditions indoors, so you may see these in containers that are sold many different places. Some of them are like magnets, so you can keep it on your refrigerator or maybe even in the office on a filing drawer. They like filtered sunlight outdoors because they don't like a lot of light. They do stay small, have that narrow leaf, and the patterns have white dots. Fun plant as well. The Kalanchoe is how I pronounce it. It can be also pronounced Kalanchoe. Has a variety of leaf colors, and also, of course, it has the pretty bloom. The supermarket, that's the one I'm particularly familiar with, but the paddle plant I didn't realize was a Kalanchoe. Tolerates more sun, needs direct indoor light, and certain varieties grow little plantlets on the edge. The Pachyphytum have thick leaves that are round, and we have to protect these from freezing. They tolerate more sun, the stems do elongate, and this particular one grows in the spring and late fall, so we don't want to fertilize it in the summer. Sedums are a very large group, and they bloom in summer and fall, varieties of colors, shapes, and sizes, ground cover, low growing or trailing growth habit. Some sedums tolerate freezing temperatures and some do not, and some are for partial shade. The dragon's blood is one that I've seen locally that will tolerate the some winters and summers, and it's a pretty one with the pretty red bloom. So you'll have to watch when you buy the sedum and try to determine if it will tolerate being outside and not freezing. The Sempervivum are the hen and chicks, or another term is house leeks. They are hardy to zone 6, and there are many species and cultivars. Of course, the rosettes, when they flower in the summer, then those rosettes die, but you don't really notice it as much because again, you get the little, the next little pup that grows. Prefers cool, dry location and good drainage, and they take partial shade. The spider web, almost in the middle, that's such a pretty gray-green foliage and appearance to it. It's one of my favorite hen and chicks. The Senecio are those that have the nice trailing habit. Summer they're dormant and they grow in the winter. The daisy-like flowers are what's produced. I don't think they're really pretty, but it's pretty neat to see them blooming. So I just leave them on anyway. They prefer filtered sunlight, 50 to 80 degrees for these particular plants, like the string of pearls. And some can be small shrubs like the trident blue. But you also see the string of dolphins. Those are usually the ones that we highly sought after and sometimes hard to find. But they're neat to be able to fall over the container like you see a hanging basket. Again, it gives a different look in your combination in your container. Then they went ahead and made a cross between the Graptopetalum and a sedum, and they call this Graptosedum. In particular cultivar is California Sunset. Needs sun for that pinkish color, and it has a trailing habit. So when you go to the nurseries or you're looking online, try to find these names. And many times it can be pretty discouraging because they say assortment. But I think it's worse if you can track it down. These are some general genus groups that you can look at. To finish the presentation, we'll talk about different ways succulents are used and displayed. And that's the fun part about succulents. Many times they're used as centerpieces. You may find them for special occasions. And you can see the string of pearls in the first photograph, how pretty it makes that transition from the container to the table. They could also be used temporarily on a log. You can use cool glue on it, and they will last for a period of time.
Figure this out.
In succulents, also in other containers, are just almost the sky's the limit to a point. Some of these containers contain a potting mix underneath with some wire, and then the succulents are put into those containers. The key is to remember which of those can be outside and not. So for us, they can't remain outside unless it's all of the Sempervivum genus. But they're so pretty for enjoyment on the house, on the summertime, in Greece. You go to places where they are able to tolerate the freezing temperatures or don't have freezing temperatures, we see these pretty living walls. And then also, in general, in the last few years, they've been used in bouquets and as corsages. So in weddings, they have been very popular. There's so much more, but enjoy growing and using succulents. Besides your local nursery, if they can't get them in for you, you might go online. And as you go online, just again, look for these different genus groups and try to find those that might give you some information. Some of them don't. So maybe you just want the arrangement for the summer, that's fine with you. Or you remember to bring them inside for the winter. A couple of the references besides the Cooperative Extension in West Virginia are these two books, Succulents Simplified and A Beginner's Guide to Succulent Gardening. There are so many more that are out there. These seem to be what suited my need. I've enjoyed being with you, and happy gardening with succulents.